Hello friends, welcome back. With International Women's Day around the corner, I thought this is an important subject that I must offer an alternative thought on. Let me lay down the objectives. I'm going to talk about what gender equality is supposed to be, what it's not supposed to be, and then I'm going to move to what you can do to advance a gender neutral or a non-discriminatory approach to this subject. Objective number one is to look at social structures and relations with a fresh perspective that was possibly a blind spot in the past. This has the potential to unlock creativity, innovation, perspectives, styles, experiences, lifestyles, backgrounds that will allow companies, teams, and groups to become even more competitive. The second objective being to educate and elevate people around this topic, but broadly elevating the discussion above things that we do not directly control, like the tone of our skin, our physical abilities or disabilities, or gender. The third, and probably one of the most important, would be to eliminate systemic bias that puts one gender at an advantage and the other at a disadvantage. This is a form of flexibility and agility that allows us to support changing circumstances and putting those at a disadvantage at a neutral position. And finally, the fourth objective is to provide an opportunity for representation or proportionality in case of genders to participate in economic, political, educational, sporting, health, employment, and many other areas of opportunities regardless of the gender. This too, as I just explained, unlocks competitive advantages that are enabled by diversity of thought that otherwise, without having representation around the table, would be lost. Now, the reason for making this video is not to talk about gender diversity, but in fact, I wanted to talk about what gender diversity is not, because there's a lot of misconceptions around it, and I believe the concept needs a lot more clarity and conversation. So I'm going to spell out the few things that I believe gender equality is not. Gender equality is not about strict egalitarianism or insisting that the genders must be equal. Some people will advance more than others. Some people will rise above the norm, but this will be a consequence of the choices that they make, the work that they do, the skills that they have. Presented a similar set of choices and opportunities, there is a possibility genders will decide things differently. Insisting that the opportunities and access to those opportunities must be equal is right, and insisting that the outcome is equal may be a mistake. And so I'm saying the concept of redistributive taxing or favoring those who will not decide to participate but should expect equality of outcome is fundamentally wrong. We should not expect to be compensated for lesser abilities, for lesser talent, or lesser competitiveness. So imagine having a race between two genders, men and women, and giving women a handicap as an example. Is this equality? Is this equality of opportunity? Is this elimination of a gender bias, or is it actually the introduction of a new one? Maybe an equality of opportunity. Providing the opportunity to race together may be providing an equality of opportunity, but it does not guarantee that the outcome is going to be equal, and therefore one man and one woman are both going to end up the race exactly at the same speed at the same time. Now let's move to a more cerebral domain. Let's say insisting that all men must read the same number of books as women, whereas the opportunity to read books is equal to men and women. Insisting that both the genders must exactly read the same number of books is expecting an equality of outcome which is not necessary. Whereas the opportunity to do this is fairly equal, the outcomes may be different. Gender equality is not and should not be about quotas, because that is ticking the box, and this will result in suboptimal outcomes if not executed the right way. Let me explain how this can come back and become the problem which we were trying to eliminate in the first place. Let's say we insist on equality of outcome and say that from a law school, the number of men and women that will graduate will be exactly equal. Now, this would be a wonderful outcome if the grades and the averages that both men and women throughout their tenure in this law school keep on delivering the same grades. However, what happens if certain number of men end up failing or a certain number of women end up failing? We could not guarantee the equality of outcome. Or let's take the process for admissions. At the point of admissions, if there is a quota of 50-50 and the preceding grades into admissions into those schools and the preceding grades reaching that admission are not exactly the equal when divided between men and women, we are creating a new problem. Men will be measured on a different scale and women will be measured on a different scale. Now I want to remind you, the problem we were trying to solve was not reparations for women. The problem we were trying to solve is impartiality or gender neutrality, isolating the variable of gender. But what we are doing is the complete opposite. We are putting it at the center of the issue. We are saying that if you are a woman, you will be competing in this lot. If you are a man, you will be competing in this lot. And therefore, we are throwing the very concept of equality out. This disrespects the central concept that we were trying to deliver on. Women or men do not need an advantage to be equal. So you can strive for 50-50, but through the lens of impartiality or isolating the variable of gender, not putting it at the center of the discussion, not by doing completely the opposite of what you were setting out to do. Appeasement to please one gender over the other will become burdensome and claustrophobic to the other gender. Being in such an ironic state, the longevity and value of this concept is going to be diluted. We need to be careful. The third thing it should not be is about introducing a new systemic bias and disadvantage to one gender over the other to achieve equality of outcome, rather focusing on the equality and quality of opportunities presented. The process of corrections, adjustments, and improvements that, given enough time and opportunity, would result in preferences, dispositions, aspirations, attitudes, and passions taking over circumstances versus access to opportunities. Having said that, some may still argue that this neutrality, while it is essential, it may not still be sufficient. Point number 4. This is not about one gender trying to act like the other gender. This is not about activism. This is not about shouting slogans for an overnight revolution. But instead, this is a gradual, strategic process of awareness, careful education. This is not about one gender believing that they are the victim and behaving like it, but the recognition that everyone is writing their own narrative to a certain degree possible. It should not be a factor that becomes divisive in society. Most importantly, it is not about universality or trying to make sure that everyone reaches exactly the same place, rather trying to make sure that everyone is advancing. Different countries, different cultures, different people are at different stages. Advancement and progress in the right direction is all that matters. Trying to diminish, categorize, judge people who have a different point of view is not going to help. Instead, dialogue, education, enlightenment, perspective, exposure, and letting people experience a journey where they understand these things is going to help. A lot of the things acceptable one generation ago are not acceptable today anymore. And similarly, a lot of things acceptable today will not be acceptable in the future. So as an example, imagine a couple has decided to socially arrange themselves around a primary caregiver and breadwinner model. Society at large should be fine with whatever their choices are, with any host of variations possible, without judgment. While a lot of things may be sounding unacceptable, women were allowed to vote in the US, in Russia, in Britain 30 years after New Zealand. And there are still countries in the world where women are not allowed to vote. This is a journey that takes time, patience, awareness, conversation, and courage. Finally, this is not about money or even career advancement. Money has a different meaning for different people. For some people, money gets to the head and they think about it 24/7, how they can increase it, etc. For others, it stays in the bank and they seldom ever look at it or they care about it. For some, money is a trap. For others, money is freedom. Or similarly, career. For some, it may be entrapment or enslaving themselves to a job. For others, it may be about empowerment. For others, it may be about liberation and the freedom to do what you want to do. For some, career advancement may seem as trading away your valuable time for a little bit of money. For others, it may be completely the opposite. For some, career advancement might be safety. For others, it might be confining themselves to the danger of routine. And you start seeing patterns when a lot of these individuals start arranging themselves as groups. So now that I've explained what I believe this concept is and what this concept is not, let me try and take a stab at what I think is going to advance gender neutrality. And like all huge and massive problems in the world like climate change, the way to solve it is going to be very fundamental and basic. Starting with education. As science, technology, engineering, and mathematics become 80% of the jobs in the future, the participation and representation of genders in this area is going to be a key determinant of the outcome. Number 2, skill development of certain genders in areas where they are today underrepresented. Responsibility and choice plays a very important role here. People will not develop a skill that they're not interested in, and therefore it is our responsibility to already start developing the interest of those individuals who we believe are underrepresented in an area. Number 3, policies and systems that protect the interests of those affected, whether it is progressive childcare policies, whether it is parental leave policies, or those things that can encourage neutrality, ensure representation and proportionality, ensure not only equality of input and opportunity, but also quality. Number 4, 4. Thinking of this as an entire holistic system versus small individual parts. This journey for most begins at home, continues through education, and then with friends. All of these people will have to play an active role in eliminating the bias that people have in their minds. Therefore, parents will need to avoid compartmentalizing genders into norms and fostering an environment that cultivates equality of opportunity. Number 5, constantly being aware of stereotypes and whether and how these are being portrayed in media, working to nullify and clarify any stereotypes and inaccuracies around gender portrayal. Number 6, speaking up with wisdom, respect, and being able to listen without judgment, not shaming others that are less aware, but being responsible to fix the bias where it is creeping in through consistency of actions and words. Number 7, supporting the disadvantaged gender by supporting, mentoring, role modeling for them so that they realize others can also help them navigate and support them in this journey of uncertainty. And don't think this is about a senior to a junior relationship. This is about people being able to have and share experiences. Anyone can support, role model, and be a mentor to anyone else. But it is your responsibility to find someone that you look up to and that can sponsor you. Anyone that has been able to successfully navigate has had someone pull them up. And finally, number 8, to sum it all up, finding ways to measure not only the progress, but with the satisfaction of the progress, to be able to evaluate the quality and executional consistency of the change that you're trying to implement. Wow, that was a lot of information. Now imagine being able to do all of this and still the world isn't equal. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have not succeeded. It could just mean that we need to continue working on this journey, or that we need more drivers to accelerate this process. We need to remember that we must remain open and flexible to keep on advancing, or remembering in our mind that while we are trying to eliminate the systemic bias at an individual level, but at a sizable enough group level, maybe preferences are still driving outcomes. Having said that, the fact that we are committed to look at these concepts afresh, ready to educate, eliminate systemic biases, create equal opportunities, and progress on this mentality in actions, policies, words, and conversation, keep doubting and taking feedback from those that are affected, I'm certain that we are going to continue to advance and improve in our journey of gender neutrality. Thank you, and I would love to hear back from you. What are your thoughts on this subject? And is there something that you believe that needs to be done more? Until next time, bye-bye.